Underneath the surface of every choice you make, every yes, every no, every hesitation before speaking, there's something ancient moving quietly inside you, something older than reason, something that whispers before you even know it's there. You feel it in the tightening of your chest before you say what you really think. You feel it when your hand hovers above a decision, even one that seems harmless. That faint, invisible tremor you call instinct is not always what it seems. It's fear, not the loud, screaming kind that makes you run from danger, but the hidden one, the quiet fear that hides beneath your logic, disguising itself as caution, patience, or strategy. The kind that doesn't stop you from breathing, but controls which breath you dare to take. Most people believe they are free, that their choices are their own. But every day, in small and silent ways, this hidden fear shapes what we say, what we pursue, and even who we become. It's not fear of death or pain or failure. It's something far more subtle, the fear of disconnection. The fear that if we act differently, speak honestly, or stand apart, we'll lose something essential: approval, belonging, safety. You might think of yourself as rational, independent, immune to such invisible forces. But your mind, ancient, biological, desperate to survive, has been built over thousands of years to trade freedom for safety without your permission. Imagine a primitive human standing at the edge of a dark forest. Inside lies both food and danger, the possibility of survival and death intertwined. His heartbeat rises. His muscles tighten. He steps back, convincing himself he'll wait for daylight. But the truth is, daylight never comes. It just moves further away each time he retreats. The forest isn't real anymore. It's replaced by job interviews, relationships, ambitions, and conversations we avoid. Yet the fear feels the same. The fear that if we enter, we won't come out unscathed. And so we hesitate. Modern fear doesn't roar. It negotiates. It wears suits and speaks softly in your ear. It tells you to stay quiet during the meeting because your idea might sound stupid. It tells you not to apply for that position because rejection will sting more than staying invisible. It tells you that being yourself might cost you more than pretending. And you believe it, not because you're weak, but because your brain is loyal. Loyal to the patterns that once kept your ancestors alive, even if now they keep you small. You see, your mind is an exquisite machine built for survival, not happiness. Every neuron, every flicker of thought is designed to predict pain before it happens. It's constantly scanning, evaluating, calculating the safest route through life. But the algorithm is ancient. It doesn't understand that your predator is no longer a tiger in the grass, but a comment online, a judgment, an awkward silence. And so it reacts the same way, with hesitation, avoidance, and a quiet surrender to comfort. Fear doesn't always feel like terror. Sometimes it feels like logic, like that perfect, reasonable voice in your head saying, maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe it's safer to wait. You listen because it sounds rational, because fear doesn't shout, run, anymore. It whispers later, and later becomes a lifetime. Think about the last time you had a chance to speak your truth and didn't. The last time you saw an opportunity but told yourself it wasn't for you. The last time you wanted to walk away but stayed because leaving felt riskier than suffering. Each of those moments was not a choice, but a surrender to an invisible script your mind keeps rewriting to protect you. It's the same script that convinces you that people who take risks are reckless, that vulnerability is weakness, that silence is strength. But deep down, that script was written by fear. The hidden fear controlling your decisions doesn't live in your thoughts. It lives in your body, in the tension of your shoulders, the tightening of your jaw, the small avoidance you can't quite explain. The body remembers what your mind forgets. It remembers every humiliation, every moment you felt small, every time being open led to pain. It catalogs them carefully and uses them as data to predict future danger. So when you feel resistance, when every part of you says Don T, it is not always wisdom. Sometimes it's just an old wound trying to keep you safe. And yet there's a cruel paradox in all of this. The more you obey that hidden fear, the smaller your world becomes. The more you avoid pain, the more fragile you become. Safety, pursued too fiercely, becomes its own kind of prison. And the mind that once protected you begins to betray you because it is afraid of its own freedom. There's a moment, a quiet one, when you begin to see the pattern. When you realize that your mind, brilliant and protective, is still playing an ancient game. You start to notice how every decision you call practical is really fear wearing a disguise. You start to question how much of your life is truly your own. The realization is painful, but it's also the beginning of liberation. Fear loses power not when it disappears, but when it's exposed. When you see it clearly, when you name it out loud, when you sit with it long enough to recognize its voice. It's the same voice that tells you to play small, to blend in, to avoid discomfort. But if you listen closely, you'll also hear something underneath, the faint echo of possibility, the quiet reminder that the unknown isn't always danger. Sometimes it's growth. Every great decision in history, every act of courage, every invention, every revolution was born in defiance of that fear. The people who changed the world weren't fearless. They were simply aware of their fear and chose anyway. They walked into the forest, trembling, unsure, but unwilling to wait for daylight. You might wonder how to silence that voice, but you can't. Fear doesn't vanish, it transforms. The goal isn't to erase it, but to recognize when it's steering you away from what matters. To catch yourself in the moment when comfort disguises itself as reason. To feel the tremor, the hesitation, and walk forward anyway. That's where freedom begins. There's a quiet courage that doesn't look like bravery. It looks like honesty. It looks like sending the message you've rewritten 10 times. It looks like asking for help when your ego screams not to. It looks like saying no, even when it makes you shake. These moments are small and visible to the world, but they are revolutions inside the mind. Each one rewires the ancient algorithm. Each one teaches your brain a new truth, that fear can exist without control. And then something shifts. The same situations that once made your chest tighten begin to feel different. The forest is still dark, but your steps no longer tremble. You start to realize that fear was never the enemy, only the jailer. And once you stop obeying it, its power fades into something else entirely. Awareness. That's when you discover that freedom was never the absence of fear. It was the ability to move through it. The mind that once betrayed you under pressure begins to trust itself again. Because now you see it for what it is. Not a traitor, but a frightened child trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists. You breathe, and something ancient inside you exhales with you. You step forward, not because the fear is gone, but because you've stopped mistaking it for truth.